European fashion. He had always loved that continental bullshit. He smiled genially and reached for her. As she'd expected, he turned his head to kiss her on the mouth, testing her compliance. She forced herself to melt against him, her arms winding around his neck. While his slimy tongue probed her mouth, her fingers worked the makeshift clasp of the bracelet. She was proud of the garrote, which she'd fashioned herself out of titanium cord and oak. The sharpened wire was strong enough to cut through even vampire bone. She had practiced on a tree stump. When he pulled back to leer at her, she smiled as sweetly as she could, flipping one end of the weapon around his neck with supernatural speed. She had it drawn tight and began to pull before confusion even registered in his eyes. Fast as he was, by the time he got his fingers up to claw at the garrote string, it was too late. She pulled with every bit of her considerable strength, and the garrote snapped the bone of his spine. His head was turning to dust before it hit the tacky shag carpet. Later, some of her accusers would argue that her actions were a treacherous betrayal of her own kind. They insisted that she should have challenged him to an honorable fight. But she didn't care about being honorable. She cared about him being dead. Chapter 1. "What is that thing?" came a disgusted voice from across the table. I smoothed the sweat-dampened hair off my forehead so I could lift my gaze to the speaker. It was nearly dinner time, but the heat from the day seemed to linger in the air, making our table at the downtown LA Art Walk almost unbearable. If that weren't uncomfortable enough, a ray of sunlight had managed to find a crack between the skyscrapers and was rapidly intruding across my table like a 3-foot melanoma laser. I knew from experience that in a few minutes it was gonna hit me right in the eyes. Despite the heat, the woman standing in front of me was immaculate, a heroin-thin 40-ish blonde with a Prada bag in the crook of her elbow. Her perfectly made-up eyes were fixed on Shadow, who was curled up on the sidewalk, her chin resting on my foot. I think the woman's features were trying to convey revulsion, but they were having a hard time fighting through all the Botox. Shadow, for her part, cracked open one eyelid, glanced at the woman, and went back to sleep. I was suddenly very jealous. "This is my dog," I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant. Oh, okay, I tried a little. Shadow had started life as a dog, it was true, but a 180-pound dog that was part hairless Peruvian, part wolf, and God knew what else. And that was before she was spelled to be ink black and have superpowers. "Well, that is the ugliest dog I have ever seen," the woman sniffed, tossing her perfectly blown-out hair. I hear this line at least once a day, and it's astounding how many ways there are to deliver it. Some people are shocked, and some are even sort of admiring. I don't really mind that because, well, Shadow's ugliness is so thorough that it really is impressive. But this particular woman was using a tone that suggested I should really consider putting Shadow down to liberate the world from the blight of her hideousness. I put down the binder of notes I'd been studying. "That's so funny," I said to the Prada woman. "I was just going to say the same thing about you." She gave me a blank look. "But I don't have a dog." I sighed. She was literally too stupid to insult. "Are you going to buy a sculpture?" I demanded, waving a hand at the beautiful handmade carvings spread across the table in front of me. She turned up her nose. "No." "Then go away, or I shall taunt you a second time," I said in my best French accent. The woman gave me a bewildered look, but had the sense to back away. "Your customer service is appalling," she snapped as a parting shot. "So are your shoes," I called back. There, that was hitting her where she lived. The woman made a humph noise and flounced away on her Chanel espadrilles. Not for the first time, I wished Shadow and I could high-five.